After parents kicked me out, they asked me to come back, because I inherited my rich granddad fortune, and now there is a war in the family, because everyone wants this. I was 17 when my sister convinced my parents to kick me out of the house. Yes, you heard that right, kicked me out. It started with a petty argument about space. She wanted more space in our shared bedroom because she had recently started modeling. She said she needed a bigger closet for her clothes and a place to set up her makeup station and props. At first I thought it was just one of her usual complaints that my parents would ignore, but this time was different. Apparently, she told them that she was not comfortable sharing with me anymore and needed a room to herself. My parents, instead of shutting that down, decided that the easiest solution was to get rid of me. Of course, they didn't say it in so many words. They framed it as a great opportunity for me to learn independence. They even tried to make it sound like they were doing me a favor. I think it's time for you to start figuring out life on your own, my father said. We know you'll thrive out there. My mom added. Yeah, sure. More like they bent over backwards to make my sister happy. I didn't even get the courtesy of her telling me directly she avoided me the whole week before I left. So, at 17, with nothing but a duffel bag of clothes and some cash, I moved out. Luckily, my best friend Ethan's family took me in for a while. It wasn't glamorous, but it was better than staying somewhere where I clearly wasn't wanted. I worked odd jobs, went to school during the day, and saved every cent I could. I cut off all contact with my parents and sister. If they didn't want me around, I wasn't going to beg them to reconsider. Then my life took a turn I didn't expect. My grandfather, who lived a few hours away, heard about what had happened. He wasn't close to the rest of the family they always thought he was. Weird. For living alone and keeping to himself. But he reached out to me and offered me a place to stay. I could use some company, he said over the phone. I wasn't sure at first, but when I moved in with him, I realized it was the best decision I could have made. He was nothing like my parents. He didn't judge me or lecture me about my life. He just let me be myself. Over the next year, I became his primary caregiver as his health began to decline. I didn't mind. I felt like I was finally part of a family that cared about me. One night, about a week before he died, he sat me down and said something that still sticks with me. I want you to know something, he said. When I'm gone, you don't have to worry. Everything I've worked for is yours. I've seen how selfish and superficial the rest of the family is. You're the only one who's ever shown me any respect. I was speechless. A week later, he was gone. After the funeral, I didn't talk to anyone. My parents and sister were there, but I avoided them. They tried to make small talk, acting like everything was normal, but I wasn't interested. I stayed quiet, did what I had to do, and left as soon as it was over. A few days later, I went to the notary with my grandfather's will. I didn't expect much to come of it, but as the documents were read, I realized how serious he had been. My grandfather had left me everything. The house, the cars, his savings, his stocks, everything. It didn't feel real at first. I sat there staring at the papers while the notary explained the details. We went through all the formalities, registered everything in my name, and just like that, it was official. I was the owner of everything he'd worked for all his life. But as much as people think that inheriting wealth makes you instantly happy, it didn't feel that way at all. All I could think about was him. The way he used to tell me stories about his younger days. The way he'd make tea and sit with me on the porch, even when he was too weak to walk for long. I missed him. And nothing I'd inherited could fill that void. A week later, the phone calls began. First it was my mother. She left me a message saying they needed to talk. I ignored it. Then it was my dad, saying something about wanting to catch up. I ignored that too. But when my sister called, I couldn't help myself. I picked up the phone. Hey, I just wanted to say I'm sorry about what happened earlier, she said. I wasn't fair, and I realized how much we need you back in the family. It was almost funny. The tone of her voice, the fake sincerity, it was so obvious what was going on. I decided to play along for a while. "Oh, so now you want me back?" I asked. "It's not like that," she said quickly. "We just think it's important to get back together, you know? Family is all we have in the end." I almost laughed. They didn't even have the decency to be subtle about it. I knew exactly what had changed. They had found out about the inheritance. Suddenly, I wasn't the disposable son anymore. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet with them. Not because I wanted to reconcile, but because I wanted to see how far they'd go. I wanted to hear their excuses, their justifications, their pathetic attempts to make amends. When I walked into the house, the tension hit me like a wall. It was the first time I'd been back since they kicked me out, and nothing had changed. My sister's modeling stuff was everywhere, taking up twice as much space as before. The living room looked the same, but the people in it felt like strangers. My dad started with small talk, asking about my new place and how I was doing. My mom followed up with questions about school, acting like she cared. And my sister just sat there, avoiding eye contact. I let them talk for a while, giving them just enough rope to hang themselves. Finally I said, "Let's cut to the chase. You're not here because you missed me. You're here because you found out about the legacy." The room fell silent. The silence lasted uncomfortably long after I said it. My father opened his mouth as if to deny it, but nothing came out. My mother fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve. My sister just stared at the floor, her face flushed. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "That's not true. We just realized how much we appreciate you, and we regret how things ended before." I couldn't help but grin. "Oh, really? So you didn't hear about the will and suddenly decided I was worth your time?" My mom jumped in. "It's not like that, honey. We just want to make things right. We're still your family." "Family?" I said. "You mean the same family that kicked me out so they—" I gestured at my sister. "Could have more closet space?" My sister finally looked up, her voice defensive. "I didn't want them to kick you out, okay? I just said I needed more space. I didn't think they'd actually do it." "Oh, that makes it better," I shot back. "You didn't ask them to, you just sat there and let it happen. Thanks for clearing that up." She folded her arms and muttered something under her breath, but I didn't care enough to ask her to repeat it. My dad leaned forward like he was trying to take control of the situation. "Look, let's not dwell on the past. What's done is done. We're here now, and that's all that matters." I couldn't believe the audacity. "What matters to you is that I'm sitting on a fortune and you want a piece of it. Don't act like this is some kind of heartfelt reunion. It's pathetic." My mother's voice cracked a little as she said, "We're not asking for anything. We just want to be back in your life." "Right," I said. "So if I told you I'd already donated the inheritance to charity, would you still want me back?" Her face froze. You didn't even have to say anything. The look in her eyes said it all. "I thought so," I said, standing up. "Thanks for the laughs, but I'm done here." As I started to leave, my sister finally spoke up in a voice loud enough to stop me. "Wait. You can't just walk out. We're your family, like it or not." I turned and said, "No, you're not. You made that clear the day you decided I didn't matter. If you want something, you're going to have to figure out how to get it on your own." With that, I walked out the door. But when I got to my car, I saw my father following me. He looked desperate, his hand reaching out as if to grab my arm. "Please," he said, his voice soft. "We're in trouble. Financial trouble. We need your help." The living room looked the same, but the people in it felt like strangers. My dad started with small talk, asking about my new place and how I was doing. My mom followed up with questions about school, acting like she cared. And my sister just sat there, avoiding eye contact. I let them talk for a while, giving them just enough rope to hang themselves. Finally I said, "Let's cut to the chase. You're not here because you missed me. You're here because you found out about the legacy." The room fell silent. The silence lasted uncomfortably long after I said it. My father opened his mouth as if to deny it, but nothing came out. My mother fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve. My sister just stared at the floor, her face flushed. Finally, my father cleared his throat. That's not true. We just realized how much we appreciate you, and we regret how things ended before. I couldn't help but grin. Oh, really? So you didn't hear about the will and suddenly decided I was worth your time? My mom jumped in. It's not like that, honey. We just want to make things right. We're still your family. Family? I said. You mean the same family that kicked me out so they— I gestured at my sister. Could have more closet space? My sister finally looked up, her voice defensive. I didn't want them to kick you out, okay? I just said I needed more space. I didn't think they'd actually do it. Oh, that makes it better, I shot back. You didn't ask them to, you just sat there and let it happen. Thanks for clearing that up. She folded her arms and muttered something under her breath, but I didn't care enough to ask her to repeat it. My dad leaned forward like he was trying to take control of the situation. Look, let's not dwell on the past. What's done is done. We're here now, and that's all that matters. I couldn't believe the audacity. What matters to you is that I'm sitting on a fortune and you want a piece of it. Don't act like this is some kind of heartfelt reunion. It's pathetic. My mother's voice cracked a little as she said, We're not asking for anything. We just want to be back in your life. Right, I said. So if I told you I'd already donated the inheritance to charity, would you still want me back? Her face froze. You didn't even have to say anything. The look in her eyes said it all. I thought so, I said, standing up. Thanks for the laughs, but I'm done here. As I started to leave, my sister finally spoke up in a voice loud enough to stop me. Wait. You can't just walk out. We're your family, like it or not. I turned and said, No, you're not. You made that clear the day you decided I didn't matter. If you want something, you're going to have to figure out how to get it on your own. With that, I walked out the door. But when I got to my car, I saw my father following me. He looked desperate, his hand reaching out as if to grab my arm. Please, he said, his voice soft. We're in trouble. Financial trouble. We need your help. Hearing him say that almost stopped me. Almost. I turned and looked at him. Trouble? Is that what this is about? He sighed heavily, as if carrying the weight of the world. Things haven't been easy for us. The house, we're behind on the payments. Your sister's career hasn't taken off the way we thought it would. We've had to take out loans, big ones. So now you're coming to me? I asked. After everything? You think I owe you something? I'm not saying you owe us anything, he said quickly. But we're your parents. Families help each other, right? We made mistakes, sure, but we're asking you for a chance to make things right. I stared at him for a long time. I couldn't tell if he was sincere or if this was just another act to manipulate me. Probably both. What happened to all the independence you wanted me to learn? I said. Maybe it's your turn to figure it out on your own. That's not fair, he snapped, his mask slipping for the first time. We did what we thought was best at the time. We couldn't have predicted this would happen. You mean you couldn't predict that I would end up with all of Grandpa's money? I shot back. If he had left it to you instead, would you even care that I exist now? He didn't answer, which told me all I needed to know. I have nothing more to say, I told him, and turned to get in my car. But just as I opened the door, he said something that surprised me. If you don't help us, we're going to lose the house. Is that what you want? For us to lose everything? I paused, my hand on the doorknob. Part of me wanted to walk away without another word, to let them face the consequences of their actions. But another part of me was conflicted. This wasn't just about them, this was the house I grew up in. As much as I hated them for the way they treated me, it didn't feel good to think about that place being taken away. Still, I wasn't going to hand over the money just because they asked. I'll think about it, I finally said, not looking at him. I got in the car and drove away, my mind racing. Part of me felt good about standing my ground, but the other part felt guilty? No, not guilty. Just conflicted. Later that night, I sat down with the will and everything my grandfather had left me. It was more than enough to pay off their debts and still have plenty left over for me. But was it worth it? Did they deserve it after all they'd done? I thought about my grandfather and what he'd said before he died. How they were selfish and superficial. How I was the only one who showed him respect. Would helping them go against what he wanted? Or would I just be taking the high road? Before I could decide, my phone buzzed. A text from my sister. We need to talk. There's something you don't know. The text from my sister surprised me. There's something you don't know. That could mean anything coming from her, but I wasn't in the mood for games. I didn't reply right away, hoping she'd give up, but 5 minutes later another message came through. Please. Just meet me. It's important. I stared at the screen, debating whether to ignore her or give her a chance to explain. Finally, curiosity got the better of me and I texted back. Fine. Where? We agreed to meet at a diner not far from the house. When I walked in, she was already sitting in a booth in the back, nervously stirring a cup of coffee. She looked up when she saw me, and for the first time in a long time, she actually seemed nervous. Not the usual fake nervousness she used to get sympathy for, but genuinely uncomfortable. I sat across from her without saying a word. Thanks for coming, she said softly. I didn't respond. I just waited for her to speak. She hesitated, then finally said, Look, I know you're angry with me. You have every right to be. But this isn't about that. It's about Mom and Dad. I raised an eyebrow. What about them? She leaned in and lowered her voice. They're hiding things. About the money. About why they're in trouble. I crossed my arms and leaned back in the booth. Go on. She looked around, as if afraid someone might overhear. That debt they told you about? It's worse than they said. They're not just behind on the house. They took out loans, big loans for things they didn't even need. Trips, a new car for Dad, some expensive stuff for me when I started modeling, things they couldn't afford. And now the bank is coming after them. I narrowed my eyes. And you're telling me this now because... She winced. Because I didn't know how bad it was until recently. You didn't tell me everything either. I heard them talking about it a few weeks ago. They're desperate. And they think I'm their golden ticket out of this mess. I said. She nodded, guilt written all over her face. Yeah. Pretty much. I wanted to be angry, but I wasn't surprised. It all made sense, the sudden interest in getting back together, the fake apologies, the guilt trips. They weren't trying to fix things. They were trying to save themselves. So what do you want from me? I asked. She looked down at her coffee. I don't want anything. I just thought you should know the truth before you make any decisions. I studied her for a moment, trying to figure out if this was some kind of trick. But she looked genuinely embarrassed. If she was lying, she was doing a better job than usual. Finally I said, Why are you telling me this? What's in it for you? She hesitated, then said, Because I feel terrible. About everything. The way we treated you, the way I treated you, it wasn't fair. And now that I see how much they screwed things up, I don't want to be a part of it anymore. I just want to get out. Get out? I repeated. Out of what? She looked out the window, avoiding my eyes. This family. The lies, the manipulation, the constant pressure to be perfect. I'm done. I'm trying to figure out how to get out, but I don't have the money. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to call her out for playing the victim, but another part of me believed her. Before I could respond, she looked back at me and said, You don't owe them anything. If you help them, they'll just keep using you like they used me. Do what you want, but don't let them drag you down with them. I sat there for a moment, letting her words sink in. Then I stood up and said, Thank you for telling me. But I have to think about it. As I walked out of the diner, My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text message from my dad. "We need to talk. Now." The drive to her house felt heavier than usual, like every mile was weighed down by everything I'd just learned. My dad's text didn't say much, just that it was urgent, but I already knew what it was about. They were running out of time, and I was their last hope. When I walked through the door, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. My parents were waiting for me in the living room. My sister wasn't there. She must have left before things got ugly. "Thanks for coming," my dad said, trying to sound calm, but his voice was strained. I didn't sit down. "What's so urgent?" my mom began, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. "We've been completely honest with you about our situation." I interrupted her. "Don't. I know about the loans, the vacations, the car, everything." Her face paled, and she looked at my dad, who ran his hand over his face. "So your sister talked?" he muttered. "Yes. She told me the truth. Which is more than I can say for either of you." My father stood up, his tone hardening. "All right, fine. We screwed up. We're in over our heads, and we need help. But we're still your parents, and we're asking you to do the right thing here." "The right thing?" I said, my voice rising. "You kicked me out of this house without a second thought. You didn't care about me then. Why should I care about you now?" My mom looked like she was going to cry, but I didn't fall for it. "You don't understand," she said. "We had no choice. Things were tight even then, and we thought you thought I was expendable," I finished for her. "And now that Grandpa has left everything to me, suddenly I'm valuable again. That's all I am to you, isn't it? A bank account." My father's face hardened. "It's not like that." "Yes, it is," I shot back. "You're only here because you need money. If Grandpa had left you the inheritance, you wouldn't even call me." For a moment, no one said anything. Then my mother broke the silence. "We'll lose the house if you don't help us. Is that what you want? For your family to be homeless?" I let out a bitter laugh. "My family? The same family that made me live on couches and scrimp and scrape for a year while you made sure they—" I pointed to my sister's empty chair had all the space and clothes they wanted? "Don't make me laugh." My father stepped closer. "This isn't about the past. This is about now. You have a chance to fix this, to save us." "No," I said firmly. "I have a chance to save myself from ever being under your thumb again. That's what Grandpa wanted. He saw through you, and now so do I." My mother's tears finally began to fall. "We are your parents. Please don't let this be the end of us." I stared at her for a long moment, then said, "It's already over." I turned and walked out the door without looking back. I kept waiting to feel bad, but I didn't. I felt free. I'd spent years thinking I wasn't good enough for her, that I'd somehow failed. But now I saw the truth. They didn't deserve my help, and they certainly didn't deserve my forgiveness. A week later, a neighbor told me that the bank had repossessed the house. My parents had to move to a small apartment in another city. My sister texted me once to say she'd moved out on her own and was working part-time while trying to rebuild her life. And me? I kept moving forward. I stayed in the house my grandfather left me, living the way he'd want me to on my terms. No guilt, no manipulation, no looking back. Just me, finally free of them.